Welcome to the Arlington Street Church podcast. Founded in 1729, Arlington Street continues today as a gathering place for progressive people of faith in the greater Boston area and beyond. We are located at the corner of Arlington and Boylston Streets, across from the Public Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. Please visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.
Shame is a terrible habit. I can't for the life of me figure out the place of shame in furthering the evolution of our species. Shame is destructive and especially self-destructive. Unlike guilt, which can inspire us to change our behavior, there are no data to support the idea that shame is a motivation for good behavior. And it feels awful. It feels like something we should choose to face and obliterate. The spiritual practice of ending shame. Everything I know about shame I learned from Dr. Brené Brown. Let's start with her definition. Whereas guilt is feeling that we've done something bad, shame is the feeling that we are bad. We all have it. The only people who don't feel shame are those without the capacity for empathy and human connection. I think that means that either you feel shame or you're a sociopath. So let's go with feeling shame and getting over it. It turns out that learning to talk about it is the cure. Enter vulnerability. In vulnerability is our strength. Roger Jones, my colleague in Sacramento, writes, historically, our liberal faith was a spiritual assault on shame against the Calvinistic doctrine of innate human depravity. Early Unitarians argued that human beings are capable of making better choices. The first Universalists proclaimed that our worth came from a loving God. God is love, they cheered. You are loved. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we are called back to love. The answer to shame is to celebrate the love that will not let us go. We are held in love. It's a great theology, but it doesn't obliterate our shame-based habits. Our societal conditioning is that strong. Somehow, coming through the great doors into this beloved spiritual community doesn't automatically amplify our self-love and our acceptance of others and banish shame. We have some spiritual work to do. Many years ago, a group of North American mental health providers met with the Dalai Lama. They were trying to explain to him the epidemic of low self-esteem they were experiencing among their clients. His Holiness's English is very good, but he could not understand what they were saying. He turned to his translator for help. It turns out that in Tibet, a deeply tribal communal culture, there is no word, no concept of low self-esteem. The Dalai Lama was mystified and deeply troubled. Brené Brown explains that we are hardwired for connecting with others, but shame stops us from making true, deep connections. Shame, that intensely painful feeling that we are flawed or not enough, cuts so deeply that we conclude we are unworthy of love and belonging, unworthy of our most basic need. And it makes us hate ourselves. Society teaches us to regard vulnerability as a sign of weakness. Healing from shame is about vulnerability, the willingness to risk emotional exposure and dare to be ourselves in all our human messiness. Kimberly Tomaszewski, my colleague in Summit, writes, there was a small group I co-facilitated where one person after another began speaking by apologizing before participating in the conversation. This might sound weird, and maybe this sounds off, but over and over we were apologizing to one another despite the fact that once someone shared, others were nodding their heads feverishly, saying yes, yes, and offering a similar experience that was still neither weird nor off. Is there something about me, she concludes, that if others see or hear, I won't be worthy of connection? We avoid, deny, and numb our shame, which only serves to dull our feelings of joy, belonging, and empathy. We make up an impossible standard of perfection, thinking that if everything looks perfect, we can minimize judgment and blame. But perfectionism crushes the messiness of creativity. It's just one more way to shame ourselves. To be courageous, Kimberly Tomaszewski says, to be courageous means to show or tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. I have been in so many settings in which we teetered on the edge of holding back or holding in, but ultimately mustered the courage and made the space for our truth and authenticity. It was divine. My own deepest shame comes from a single experience in my early childhood in which I did not speak up on behalf of my mother when my father's cruelty cut her to the quick. It doesn't matter that I never remained silent again. It doesn't matter that my mother has no memory of this incident. No understanding or compassion or mercy for the child caught in the crossfire between warring adults. The pain of remembering it is like a cold knife against my heart. And this connects me with everyone who has ever felt out of control, collusive in cruelty, self-hating, and most importantly, cast out of the circle of human concern and care. Now I know that the spiritual practice of healing shame is to be courageous and tell the truth of our lives. Shame is undone by vulnerability and connection. Brené Brown's answer to shame is the work of building what she calls shame resilience, paying attention to when we feel it, going through the feelings, literally feeling our way through it, getting back on our feet and choosing a different response. And we have to talk about it. Shame, she says, derives its power from being unspeakable. When we name it, it begins to wither. When we name it, we can learn from those who love us to practice kindness towards ourselves. This is an excerpt from a piece written by psychologist Paul Shippey. How many times a day do I become aware of my impulse to shame my son as my father used to shame me, he writes. My 12-year-old son is open and vulnerable as I was, or any child is. Into this unguarded gap, I am daily compelled to fall like a hungry tiger. Something deep inside my body is still snarling and wants revenge for the harm done to me by my father. It was a hatchet job he did. I am learning to change my behavior in the split-second synapse where the old route of shame is traveled. The link between my wound and my shaming behavior is finally being broken by training and awareness. It may never be dissolved completely, but it is being slowed down little by my determination not to pass this father wound on to my son. I am going to break this link. I am going to separate the wound from the behavior. Each time my hidden shaming impulse dies, I feel stabbed on the spot by an old pain somewhere in my heart. I can see that I would rather avoid this little heart stab and let the shaming missile fly. But I interfere. I claim my own pain. I take responsibility for the wound I received. I feel it. I own it. I do not pass it on to my son. When someone has the courage to share their shame with us, we can receive the gift of this gesture of intimacy with empathy. After seeing a video in which he felt horrible about how he looked, instead of stuffing it down, joking about it, or shutting down, author Adam J. Pearson made the decision to turn to a friend and speak his truth. His friend didn't try to negate his feelings. He simply assured Adam that he wasn't alone, that they often feel that way. Adam felt the shame draining out, leaving in its wake a sense of connection and also of insight. It showed him, he writes, some old conditioning that I innocently came to believe to be true, but it isn't serving me. I don't need to form an identity or a story from this shame anymore. I don't need it. I can let this shame go. We are worthy of loving and being loved just as we are. What a relief. This is perhaps the most important key to building shame resilience, learning to regard ourselves with compassion and kindness. In the midst of a meltdown, Brené Brown has learned, she says, to talk to myself the way I would talk to someone I really love and whom I'm trying to comfort. In A Return to Love, author and activist Marianne Williamson writes, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us. It's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Beloved spiritual companions, let us practice the end of shame. May we cultivate courage and tell the truth of our life with our whole heart. Invulnerability is our strength. You are worthy of love just as you are. You are loved. We are held in love. Together, let us build a beloved spiritual community with intimacy, empathy, compassion, and kindness. Let us celebrate the love that will not let us go. Amen. I invite you to join hands for the benediction. The hand in yours belongs to a person whose heart is sometimes tender, whose eyes sometimes fill with tears, whose laughter is a beautiful sound. The hand you are holding belongs to a person who is seeking wholeness, who is bringing a gift, and knows you are doing the same. As we leave this sanctuary, may our hearts and minds be open, may our voices be strong, and may our hands remain outstretched. Let us keep this faith, my friends, and pass it on. The service begins when the service ends. Bless your hearts. Amen.
Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. 'Cause your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my
Please visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.